When we bought it, it was farmed for potatoes, so it was heavily cultivated in a way that works really well for restoration compared to a field that maybe is left fallow and becomes overgrown with a lot of noxious weeds and invasive species. When we established that we wanted to restore a natural native wetland to the site, like all wetland restoration, you know, it begins with water. Where did it historically occur, and typically where can we get it back to? And so when this was released from farming, one of the first things we did was basically disable a lot of the features that drained water off of the site. There were a couple of agricultural ditches that flanked the south and western side of the property, and we closed those ditches, and then there were ag tile features that were put in to support the farming and drain the wetland. And we disabled some and we modified some so that we could hold water seasonally. We worked with the farmer to basically do some site prep, and then we worked with contractors to close the agricultural ditches that first year. That first summer we released the site from farming, put in the water control structure, and then basically after the site was disked and spot sprayed, we were seeding the site. And that first winter, what you'd have seen would have been a site that looked very similar to what it would have looked like the previous year. Instead of, but the difference would be, instead of having the site recently cultivated and having potatoes removed, now there was a native seed bank that was, you know, established through the seed that we broadcasted. The flooding and the burning being important disturbance regimes, basically, that we've brought back to the site, both to support the native species that we've introduced, and also to knock some of them back so that other native species can find room. And the advantage we've had with some of the prolonged flooding in the last couple of years and burning is some of that hairgrass has been stressed to the point to where it died back enough, and then when we burn through, what you're left with is basically a charred skeleton of hairgrass. Here it's starting to respond again, but this has left a lot of bare ground, and now there's popcorn flower coming back up through here. The more kind of tools you have to control, and then knowledge about how to use those tools, that gives you the opportunity to kind of react to the new variables that you get on the site, the new noxious weeds that come in, and, you know, what you learn from your monitoring.
Even with the inputs from the floodwaters from the Tualatin every year, which do bring in weedy species sometimes, you still manage to get this native dominated vegetation, which is really quite amazing, considering what could come in from the river. There are actually a number of locally rare species that are associated with wet prairies. Even though they don't have any status, they're known from a handful of sites or less in the region, just because this habitat is so scarce. So the interesting thing about this area is that the popcorn flower is nice and it's flowering and green right now, but once that's done, it typically produces seed and dries up very quickly, and then you see this kind of next phase of vegetation that's waiting to come up.
It's a great site already. We try never to kind of be comfortable with what we have and keep trying to refine it. This site is, you know, largely native, but there are some invasive species that are out here, and we're trying to be real aggressive about holding those down. Talk about a nexus between wildlife and plants, and a lot of, you know, what we're doing at these wetlands is all about that. The plants are really a basis for the wildlife that's here.